Sometimes when we begin to question our faith or have doubts about our tradition, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert. When we take a step back and honestly evaluate organized religion in the 21st century, many times it doesn't make any sense. The more we cling to it and try to save it, the worse it becomes. In addition, widespread abuse, cover-ups, and victim shaming cause some of us to question whether it will ever be right again.
The Desert Sanctuary was created by Carl and Laura Forehand. It consists of a podcast, a blog, along with Carl and Laura's writing.
We're happy you're here. Welcome to the show. Hi, welcome to the Desert Sanctuary podcast. We're glad that you're with us today. I'm Laura Forehand. I'm here with Carl Forehand, and we have a couple amazing guests. Two women that, I've just really enjoyed learning so much from each and every one of you. First, we have Tracy King, and Tracy activates potential. For more than 20 years, she has dedicated her career to designing transformational experiences. She is a master designer, professional development consultant, best-selling author, and owns an instructional design agency. Her work, synthesizing how brains learn into a model of crafting transformational experiences, has been featured on NBC, ABC, Fox, Forbes, and hundreds of nationally syndicated television, newspaper, and magazine outlets. As the gritty mystic and intuitive channel and transformational teacher, Tracy reveals where her clients are in the levels of awakening to take the guesswork out of divine development, allowing for more yes and less WTF. I love that. The goal is to embody your whole self, the same aspiration as the spiritual alchemists of old. The transformational formula she is sharing through her channeling and teaching is to align, allow, and be. The Gritty Mystic podcast holds space for illuminating conversations on personal spiritual development, inspiring divine breakthroughs. So welcome, Tracy. That's an amazing bio.
It makes me feel my bio looks puny compared to yours.
No, it's great to be here with y'all.
Not only do we have Tracy on the podcast today, we also have Kerri Hummingbird. So excited that she is here. Kerri Hummingbird, soul guide and host of Soul Nectar Show, is the #1 international best-selling author of The Second Wave, Transcending the Human Drama, and the award-winning best-selling book, Awakening to Me, One Woman's Journey to Self-Love, which describes the early years of her spiritual awakening. Miss Hummingbird inspires people to lead their lives wide awake with an authenticity, passion, and purpose that positively impacts others. She catalyzes mind shifts that transform life changes into gifts of wisdom. Her new book, already #1 international bestseller, is called Love is Fierce, Healing the Mother Wound, and describes the most direct path to spiritual enlightenment. So welcome to you as well, Kerri. We are so glad that you are here today with us.
Oh, I love our ongoing conversations back and forth. This is like so fun to have, to open up this whole space. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So both of you have been on our Leaning Forward conference. We've talked on the podcast before. I was telling you before we signed on that you guys are two of my favorite humans. And when we've been intentional about interviewing women lately, and I couldn't imagine interviewing women without talking to you guys.
Right.
We're so grateful that you're here. Excited about what the conversation is going to do today. But let me just start it out this way. So Laura and I wrote a book called Out into the Desert. And I know from the beginning, like talking with Kerri originally, talking about that not only did we want to evolve out of typical organized religion, especially the kind that we were in, and we wanted to evolve out of that. So we wrote a book about kind of taking an honest look at that. Why we're taking ourselves out? We're really moving forward. Was it really as bad as we thought it was? We found out 2 years later it was worse than we thought it was. And so we keep kind of progressing on this journey, and that's what we want to talk about. But we've got to start where all of us kind of came from, is that with organized religion, right? And so I wrote down, I don't, sometimes I even feel bad. I feel like that they will feel like I'm bashing religion, but they seriously don't know. They don't think it's bad. They think God is on their side. They think that they know and we don't know, and they think they're right and we're wrong and everybody else is wrong. It's like when they used to talk about the band walking down the street and the one guy is going the wrong way, and he thinks, why is the rest of the band not going the right way? And that's how I picture organized religion right now. It's toxic. It traumatizes people. It attracts people that are traumatized, but it's not doing it's not doing anything. And so, people ask, well, why can't you just go do your thing and be quiet about that? But we can't, because it's still hurting people. And we hear stories every single day. Like we just talked to Megan, who has a database of Baptist sexual abusers, and this continues, and they continue to cover it up. And when they continue to foster that system that doesn't work. So I want to hear your thoughts, and maybe you have a much more mature attitude towards this than I do, and not maybe whatever, but I'd like to hear from you guys. We want to move beyond this. We want to get further down the road. We want to evolve and move to different levels and get somewhere else. But we've got to address this first, because many, many people are still stuck here, right? So tell me your thoughts initially on what I just said.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when you're on the deconstruction journey, you get to a place where you just have to stop caring that people don't like that. And that realizing that the shush, be quiet, get in line is part of fundamentalism. And as long as you're not in line, you're going to get that kind of feedback from that group. And all you can do really is just be authentic. And part of that, connecting to your soul self and being authentic, is really stepping into what love really means. How one who loves others, regardless, of their point of view, what that actually means, instead of the coercive kind of love that we come out of when we've had a church experience. And they can't argue with love. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, this is kind of how it is in my family. There's disagreement about religion. Me and my family, we are not religious, and we get prayed for, and we get book recommendations and things like that. But ultimately, they don't have a question with my character, because what is there to question if, I'm still the same loving, moral, curious, passionate me, ultimately that hasn't changed about me. I just do not ascribe. I've canceled my subscription to religion so that I can be more authentic, and so that I can really step into what is possible for me on this life journey, which wasn't possible in that structure.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really beautiful, Tracy, that you share your journey out of that paradigm, and with a family that's still in it. For myself, I have to credit my mom for the initial desert experience, because my mom, grew up Pentecostal Christian in West Texas. And my grandma went to church like 5 days a week, and gave her like life savings for the church to have carpet and things like that. It's like she was very, very dedicated to it. Jerry Farwell, the whole thing. She believed it, hook, line, and sinker. And my grandma is now passed on, so I often wonder, like, what do you think about it now, Grandma? But it's my mom just said. My mom grew up. Now, when my mom was growing up in this environment, it was the 60s. It was Martin Luther King and civil rights. And she was, at 5 years old in the church, going to Sunday school, singing the song, "All the little children are loved by God, no matter what color they are." And then here's a colored bathroom and here's the white bathroom. And my mom's a little 5-year-old girl wanting to go into the colored bathroom because it has a rainbow. And she likes the rainbow, and not understanding why she can't, and asking questions like, how come there's two separate bathrooms, and then not getting answers. And my mom was really the feisty one that said, I don't agree with this. This doesn't sit right in my body. And I say no. And then later on, she was a soda jerk, in the town. And this black man came in for a soda, and she gave it to him in a glass. And the man looked at her and said, I can't have that in a glass. And you didn't have to give me that in a paper cup, and my mom's like, well, why? Because I'm black. And my mom was just like, well, that's not right. I'm not going to do that. And then she got in trouble with the manager. And so my mom just saw all this hypocrisy, and she was just feisty enough as a person and argumentative enough, gritty enough, if you will, Tracy, to use your term. But she said no. And so when I was growing up, my mom determined she was not going to give me any religious background whatsoever, like absolutely no conditioning. So when I was growing up, of course, I was the oddball out, because I was the one without anything, right? Everybody had a home, everybody had a religious home, and sort of like a pedigree, like, well, I'm Baptist, well, I'm Catholic, well, like this little pedigree. And I didn't have a label after my name. So I was always the weirdo, And so I kind of grew up in this way, but at first I felt like it was sort of a liability for me because I didn't have that. But then when I went through my, my dark night of the soul and my midlife and all of this, and I started I found this path of shamanism, of like, which, by the way, the early Christian Essenes were essentially shamanistic. And so are early Buddhists. I mean, all of these major religions start off with earth. And so I found this path, and I'm in the group, and people are saying to me, do you know how lucky you are that you don't have any of this conditioning? Because you can see right through it. And I actually can see right through it. And what I see, you're asking about, like, is it what's going on with all this fundamentalism and how harmful it is? What I'm actually seeing is sort of levels of understanding. So at the early level of understanding, just like if you look at little children need rules. Like I remember my son going to preschool, and he had a lot of aggression, and he would like bite the other kids and kick them and, spit on them. And he would say, the F-bomb occasionally because he heard dad saying that at home, things like that. It was very embarrassing stuff. Right. And so when I was giving birth to my second son, my older son was with my mom at home, and he was saying the rules. You can't kick your friends. You can't, push your friends. You can't spit on people, and you can't say F, And my mom was just bursting out laughing. But like, that's how we begin. We begin like to understand something as massive as all that is, the consciousness that created us and created the trees and the rocks and the plants. And I mean, think about, just how incomprehensible that mystery is. Mm-hmm. So when we start to understand that mystery, we got to start with rules, because how else would we even start? We have to start someplace, so it makes sense that there's been a lot of rules. But now we're at the place where, evolutionary wise, I think there's a lot of souls on the planet who are ready to color outside the lines, who are like, I know how to color in the lines. I know how to follow the rules. I can discern for myself now in my own body whether something's right or not. Like my mom, like it's not right to segregate people based on the color of their skin. You can tell me the rule all day long, all you want, but I know that's not right. There's a lot of people now who are in the inner knowing. They're at the place where they've embodied their divinity enough to be able to discern if something's right or something's not right for themselves. So we're just at the split off where now the early Christianity makes a lot of sense. You know, the Essenes, you know, and the work that they were doing to work with nature, even, and I've been doing some reading about it, even like working with plant medicines and like opening their consciousness and connecting with Mother Earth and understanding how things work. Like people are ready for that now. So we just have some people who are ready for that exploration and some people who are still trying to color inside the lines and figure out how to do that.
So I sometimes look at things like the Bible, Christianity, my former faith. I sometimes now see that as compost. I've heard people talk about that before. As you know, I can't ignore it, but I also can't keep it as an idol that has to be protected and has to be preserved. Everything in nature dies and becomes something else, or becomes a part of something else, or however you want to express that. And so, you know, I look at scriptures now as sometimes, like Paul said, those are useful. There's something that can come out of them, a nutrient that come out of that, but it's more like compost where it has to die and become a part of the soil that I grow in now. But it's not the tree and it's not the branch, you know, and it's not the thing that I worship or the thing that I idolize or have to hold on to. It provides nutrition for me to move on. But I've got to put it behind. At the same time, I still feel a little bit like I need to warn people that where you're at is not, you know, it's not going anywhere, and you're harming people at the same time. Anyway, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you know, whenever all our collection of experience up to this present moment is all compost, all of it is. And some of it's more rotten than others. Some of it's more traumatic than other parts of the compost. There's lots of stuff in the compost. Mix it up. And that is part of who we are, but it doesn't have to define who we are. So anytime we're talking about past experiences, they of course inform how we got to this place. And even blessings can come out of, you know, crazy things that happen to us. But man, I mean, if we just are going to look at the facts at how the Bible was composed and all of the changes, editorial, just craziness that's happened to that book over the centuries, I mean, to think that is a reliable piece of literature, there's nothing I can personally take from it anymore. But back in the day, you know, when that was a part of my life and I was steeped in studying it and understanding its historical cultural relevance and what was happening at the time, different pieces were written. There were, you know, I realized from that experience, what I resonated with was poetry, was crystal moments in literature. And I can find that in other pieces of literature that aren't steeped in colonialism and patriarchy, that aren't steeped in violence and used to perpetuate violence. And so I find those bits and those little guideposts and those reminders, and art for me is a window into, you know, spiritual realms as well. And we can find that richness exists all over the place.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Tracy, because it's kind of like what I see when I see people that are very literalist, sort of dogmatic, is almost like Jesus is the armor. It's like, this is my armor. The Bible is my armor. And I'm not going to put down my armor. Because why? Because I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake if I do something myself. And so what ultimately that says is I don't trust myself enough to listen to my own heart and make a decision based in love.
Mm.
And a lot of that is exactly what you said. It's conditioning through colonialism and patriarchy. And there's a lot of ways that this expresses. Christianity is one of those ways, but it expresses a lot of different ways in our family systems. But the main thing that it's done is because if we think about why would it be structured literalist, and we know from looking back through the history of it, why exactly it was structured to be literal, because your survival depended upon your ability to follow these rules and to be part of this system of disempowerment. And part of the disempowerment is not listening to your own heart and your own body and what it's telling you and doing the opposite. Think about all of the Nazi soldiers in Germany, right? Like doing what they were told to do, not doing what their bodies and hearts had to have been screaming for them to do. So when we ignore our own hearts and our own bodies and just do what we're told, that's the kind of atrocity that can happen. And in America, slavery, enslavement of people of color, I mean, this is some tragic stuff. And that's what happens when we listen to a system and we don't listen to ourselves. So, I mean, this is why this is so crucial at this time. And, so we're cut off from our intuition. We're cut off from our body's wisdom, our heart's wisdom. And by the way, our body is given to us by Mother Earth, which has got to be part of the creator. I mean, come on, it's like the Garden of Eden. So why aren't you listening to that? And the second thing we lost is our ancestry. I had this moment of conversation that I didn't expect to have. My ancestors guided me. They said, Kerri, go have breakfast at this restaurant. And I said, I don't have time today. So go do it now. I said, shoot. Okay, so I went, they said, sit down. I said, where am I sitting? I said, sit at the counter next to this woman. I said, okay. I sit down and pretty soon I realized it's an African-American woman and she's like a minister of some kind. And she's writing a sermon. And I think I'm going to avoid this. Like I'm not engaging in this. And so I like pretend like I'm busy. I'm not interested. And of course, that's not the plan, because then she elbows me and she's like, hey, can you help me with something? And she's asking me if this ancient figure in the text if she would say this, he would say this, or he could have said this. And I'm like, you're asking the wrong person because I'm going to tell you that if you want to sound certain, say would, but if you want to be honest, say could, may, might, because you don't know that person and you don't even know that person existed. So everything you're saying is sort of your inference. Anyway, that launched a whole conversation during which she revealed to me, I revealed to her that my ancestors had guided me to sit there. And she revealed to me that she doesn't listen to her ancestors and wants no connection with them whatsoever. Because her one and only is Jesus, period. And my heart broke in that moment. My heart broke in that moment because I thought, this is a system of belief that disconnects people from their family systems. Wow. That to me is heartbreaking. Wow. And additionally, because as an African American woman with ancestors in the United States, in her body is her ancestral DNA. So her whole pathway to healing is now severed by her inability to connect with her ancestors and experience their pain. So she's going to Jesus for help, but it's never going to happen because the pathway to healing is through her ancestral DNA, embodying fully as herself and accepting her ancestry and all of these terrible things that happen. So anyway, I just land that here because this is how important this conversation actually is for the health and well-being of individuals and their family systems.
Yeah. So we come out of this of a system we have Laura and I both experienced, and many others have told us they experienced the same thing. It's almost like a PTSD, and we come to a point of asking big questions like, who am I? What do I like? What do I do? Who am I? And both of you have already touched on that. that, and I just want to kind of clarify, it seems that the many people we talk to, all of them seem to kind of come back to that central point of you have to go inside. You have to access the you that's there, and you have to begin there to evolve, to move on. I want to have both of you comment on that if you want to, before we get into any practices or anything like that. But just that initial thing, it's so foreign to us, especially if we're steeped in religion,
Right.
because we're told not to trust ourselves, and that we need to be looking somewhere else, even though we can't ever hardly find it. Like the woman that's trusting only in Jesus, and she's not getting clear messages, right?
Right.
So could both of you comment on that if you want to? About we're talking about moving on, really making some progress. Kerri, I think you mentioned it as levels, or growing, maturing. Some people talk about it like a spiral, of moving up, moving on. How crucial is that? Both of you have already mentioned it, but talk about how important it is. Does it make sense? Did the question make sense, sort of?
Yeah. I mean, I'll take a stab at it. As we're in this space of sometimes our awakening or the earthquake that happens in our life could be something that, tragic that happens to us, or it could be just that disconnect we're feeling. It can be health problems. It can sneak up on us, all different ways that presents. And it's an opportunity to go inside and question, what is the source of this dissonance? And do I want to do anything about it? Because some people don't. It can feel too scary to venture out into the unknown and whatever transformation will bring. But the beautiful thing is, when I was first, in my dumpster fire moment, in that awakening space, it was the revelation to ask the question, what do I want? It's like never allowed to ask that question before. And just starting there is a beautiful place without having to make a big deal of it. Just realizing it's important to connect with what you desire, with what makes you happy, with what makes you feel whole. And then once you can start just that simple line of inquiry, really our first base is healing. It's taking a look at that compost pile and deciding what are the gifts, and then what are the things we're going to leave to compost so that we can move on. And I view, this pathway as far, or as, not far, you want to go, is a series of integrations. If we think about healing as a way to reconcile pieces of us that we've splintered, that we have felt shame about, that we are in our blind spot that we don't even know about, things that just trauma that we need to heal and reconcile with before we can feel complete and whole. That first phase is all about that healing until we get to a place where when we start asking, who am I and what do I want? We realize that we're more than just this incarnated person in this moment, that there's more to us. And we have then the invitation to explore what that means and feel into, well, what could I become? And that's where we get into this place of purpose and of meaningful contribution. And it's always in service of, because when we're tapping into that greater part of us, when we're expanding our consciousness, we're always here to help one another to become more of who we are. That's the game. And once we integrate more and more of that, and our consciousness expands, we have a new opportunity and a new invitation. And that's really to embody more of that greater part of ourselves that maybe we had identified as a spirit guide or as a higher self, that soul self part of us, that we can integrate that into this now moment. And our attention really turns toward less of what do I need to be able to become to more of what are we collectively becoming together, because that whole process of integration needs to happen in our collective right now. All of the garbage that we see in the news, all of the horror and the terror and the fear and the storytelling is an invitation for us to shift our perspective from me to we. And that's really, if we mission, if you choose to accept it, those series of integrations help us to really come to the table and address that we-ness together, that healing and integrating that we can do together to co-create something better here. All of the storytelling about, I'm going to 5D ascend someplace out of here is like, that sounds like Rapture 2.0, folks. We need to co-create right here, right now, with one another. And that's a beautiful gift that we have that we can step into if we choose.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that, what you're saying, Tracy. Because I wasn't indoctrinated, into this line of thinking, it's always been really curious to me when people are so afraid of things that they just don't understand or haven't experienced, right? And I had, for example, I'm a healer. So I had somebody come to me who was Jehovah's Witness. And from what I understand, that can be a very punitive part of Christianity to be a part of, to be in. And he was terrified of getting a healing, but everything in him was screaming, I need a healing. I need a healing. Please help me. So what I ended up saying to him is I was saying, think of something or someone that you really love. And he's like, okay. I said, notice what your body does. And he said, well, my body's more open. I'm more relaxed. I said, great. Now think of something you're really afraid of. When he's like, oh, my body closed down. I said, okay, that's your clue. So think about this healing with me. And I just held space. I said, it's your choice. What is your body doing? And he's like, I feel warm. I feel safe. I said, well, that's your answer. So, this is something for every person to decide. And I know it's a big cognitive shift that we're in the middle of right now, right? Because we're going from this idea that there's one true path. And if you don't follow that one true path exactly, you're definitely going to burn in hell. It's going to be terrible. And we're moving into this model of like, oh my gosh, like God, source, creator, divine is so powerful that it can actually create a unique path per person. And the proof of that, because there's always some little bit of proof, is your thumbprint. If you think about your thumbprint, there's one of a kind. There's nobody else like you ever before or ever after or right now. You're the only one that's ever going to have that thumbprint. They've proven that. So why would you think that creator would give us a unique thumbprint if it wasn't because we're unique? Like everything is so easy and literal, actually. It's simple because I think creator knows we're all going to just blow the whole thing up because of our minds, right? We're dealing with this, we chose to come here and have these minds that do this storytelling stuff. So the truth has to be so simple and basic that it's easy to get. It's not simple. I mean, it's not easy in the sense of doing it, but what's easy is the principle of it. The principle of it is always easy and it's universal. So like so many people feel better in nature. Like if you spend a week out in nature and you lie on the ground and you go camping, even if you hate camping, but you just make yourself do it and you are going to feel better after lying on the ground for a week. Maybe your back's a little sore, but somehow something opened. It opened up. Your body opened, your perspective opened. You feel more safe. You feel more grounded because that's how simple it is. So it's like these kinds of simple things that I think people can maybe bring closer to them, that realization of that, and have some faith and trust that you really can't screw it up. I mean, look how many chances we've gotten. We've made a lot of mistakes. Like pretty much every person has made mistakes, and almost like we can't help making them. So it seems like that's also seems to be part of the design. Making mistakes seems to be part of the whole thing. So that's why now I call it the mystery, because I've just decided that's just what it is. It's the mystery. Because there's times when, and believe me, I make mistakes, and some of them are bigger than others. And I go, oh man, I thought I was done with that mistake. And then here I just did it again because there was the full moon and whatever excuse I want to make. And then, oh man, that thing just came up again. Oh, dang it. And then leaning into the process of reconciling after a mistake. Isn't that juicy and beautiful? It deepened my connection with this person recently. I mean, we went deeper. We understand each other better now. We had more extensive conversations. Why? Because he met me as what I call the luminous warrior. He met me with love. And he said, Kerri, I don't know what just happened to you. I said, I don't either. And, we talked about it and we sorted through it. And now because of that mistake, I'm closer with this person. So while we're all busy trying to not make mistakes and to be perfect and to do it right, we're actually closing down the other half of the equation where there's so much richness, there's so much potential for human understanding and connection. And I think that's the part that Tracy's alluding to. It's like, rather than try to escape this human experience where it's practically impossible to be perfect and you're trying to be perfect, why not just stop trying to be perfect and just see where the mystery guides you? And if you make a mistake, reconcile, admit it, let it take you deeper in yourself and in your relationship.
It's so interesting to me since I became an elementary school teacher is that those are the very things that I bring into my classroom. And it's interesting to me because as a second grade teacher, we want our kids to ask questions, and we teach that growth mindset and that mistakes are okay. And that's how we learn and grow. And somewhere along the line, we lose that, or we learn that that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable to ask questions or to make mistakes. So I've always found that very fascinating, that somewhere along the line, from the time they're 7 and 8 and before, that it's okay to wonder and be curious and ask questions and make mistakes. We tell them it's okay to make mistakes. That's how we grow. And yet, like I said, somewhere along the line, we lose that. And then all of a sudden it's not okay to do those things and to be curious and to wonder. And for me, that's been the richest thing about deconstructing, if you will, is just being able to wonder again and to, like you said, go within and to get in touch with my inner knowing and just all those things that you're talking about. So I've just always found that very curious, that somewhere along the line we do that. And maybe it's conditioning, I don't know, but I look at my 7 and 8 year olds now, and I look at my grandchildren now, and I want to say, don't ever give that up. Always be curious, always wonder, always ask those questions. I want to be that safe space for them, I guess, because I know a lot of times the world isn't,
So
it's a beautiful gift that you're giving them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Both of you talked about healing significantly as you've been kind of weaving that into your story. So we think healing is, finding the right doctrine, being a part of the right club that will heal us, or we believe a lot in miracles. And if I pray the right thing, if I say the right thing, if I do the right thing. But what we're discovering is that healing is, as you say, both of you would probably consider yourself mystics. Tracy is the gritty mystic. And I don't know if Kerri would call herself that or not, but the way I understand the term mystic is to experience, is that there's more of a belief of experiencing, like you're talking about. And until we my understanding of what helped me the most is what I would call shadow work, inner child work, and things like that. But more than anything, it was feeling what I feel and acknowledging where I felt it. And when I did that, like, Genlin said in the 70s, he said, what is unfelt is unchanged. And until you feel it, it doesn't shift or change into what it's trying to become. Right. And that's been so significant in my life, where I spent most of my life trying to do or be or accomplish or learn the right thing. All of a sudden, my healing was by being with that part of me that was wounded and finding out what it had to tell me. And as you kind of alluded to, it was so simple. It was more like melting in to something you can't explain. It's nurturing that part of you that's like a child, that's a part of you from the past or whatever. Almost kind of difficult to explain, but very simple. When that healing finally happened, you guys dig just a little bit more into healing, and then we'll kind of move on. Go ahead, whatever you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, what you're chatting about right now is really seeing and feeling so that you can heal, right? And what ultimately why it's healing is because finally we get to a place of self-love, self-compassion, self-acceptance, and we allow ourselves to integrate all of those pieces into the puzzle of who we are and what makes us unique, as Kerri said, and can really inform what we want to do with this life. Part of it also is as we expand into this journey and that healing, we have to sometimes find new ways to reveal so that we can see and feel and heal. And sometimes, like for me, getting in my body has been really important, because if I'm not in my body, I'm not fully connected to all of the things that want to be healed. I am, very much in my head, very cosmic. And so I can spend entire days not really fully in my body. And so, grounding is so important for me in my journey. I got to get fully in my body. And I'm like, oh, I feel that part of my body talking, or, oh, I feel that anxiety. What is that about? And then you can just continue this journey of self-inquiry. That for me has personally been absolutely a revelation. And a lot of times people will feel when they're on this journey that, it might feel scary to reach out or to ask someone to hold space for that. But I would encourage people to sit with other people in that, whether that's, partners, like, I know Carl and Laura, you've been able to do that for each other, or a therapist or a coach or a healer. That sacred space right there is so alchemical and allows us to go so much deeper more quickly. And we can kind of see beneath those triggers then. And, like Carl, you mentioned that healing as a spiral journey. You can also look at it like an onion, that those triggers, you can heal the first layer and they come back around and you can be frustrated. But that's just, your system, your body's system, telling you, well, now we get to go deeper with this. There's a little bit more. We can go deep. You're prepared to go deeper now. So we don't need to self-recriminate. This is an opportunity. And so just that simple shift of self-inquiry and realizing triggers are an opportunity to go deeper, to go wider, to become more expansive is such a beautiful opportunity. But then, being able to work with people like Kerri and the type of healing work that she does, just puts another layer of profound on top of that. I'm excited to know what you're going to say, Kerri.
Yeah, I love everything you just said.
The
I love everything you
companions,
just said. Sorry.
the companions you're talking about. Laura talks a lot about that we need people that believe our stories, and that truly listen, that are not trying to fix us, but that can just hear us. And then spirit or mystery or whatever you want to call it, is speaking through both of us. The Benedictine sisters that helped me heal the most, they would say, "Oh, what do you feel, and where do you feel it?" And I say, "Part of me feels sad." And they would say, "So part of you feels sad." And then they would just be quiet, and they would deeply listen to me, and if they ever gave any advice, if they ever directed, they called themselves spiritual directors, but if they ever directed me, it was very simple, and encouraged me to listen to myself. So go ahead, Kerri. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
That's okay. I love what you just said, because that presence is actually really key. That's the healing itself, is being witnessed. We talk a lot about being the witness, right? Well, that's what that means. Being the witness for another is like being so present. And so what in the shamanic world, we call it being the hollow bone, being so clear that spirit just flows through us unobstructed and holds space for the other person to have their experience in that total presence. That is very healing. And in that kind of safety of that presence with this, what I call the Holy Spirit, great spirit, I use different words, but those experiences let us deepen into ourselves with faith and trust that we're okay to face the darkness. And I think that's where a lot of people need to be going now. And if we want to heal collectively and move into this great awakening, that's the next step, is stop being afraid of the dark. It's like we've got to go in the dark. We have been afraid to go in there. And granted, our bodies will tell us the signs that we're uncomfortable to go there, because we'll get an upset stomach, or we'll feel nervous or fearful. And then we'll think, oh, that's the sign I just need to get away from this energy, and I need to move away from it. That's toxic. And I hear a lot of light workers using that language, that's toxic, or that person is toxic, or that relationship is toxic. And really what it is that is just mirroring to us something within ourselves that is screaming for help, that is saying, I'm locked here in the dark. Maybe it's a 2-year-old child that got abandoned, in a moment of intense need, and is screaming from the crib in the dark for the mother. Where is my mommy? I need some help. And because that energy is so resonant with the person that you're talking with, you think that person's toxic, but actually it's just triggering this body memory, this subconscious place within you that is asking for love. And so a lot of people are terrified of the dark. Certainly in the shamanic world, there's a lot of talk about entities and things like that. And, my feeling about all of that now is that is simply parts of our consciousness that went unconscious, that got lost in the dark like some little child, and scared in their room, terrified of the monster in the closet, and needs to be brought home with love. And the thing is, like, if you really believe in the power of the Creator, if you really believe in God, then you've got to believe that God is all that is, not just some, not just these that are good and they do what they're supposed to do, but like all that is, like every atom, every cell, every plant, every rock, every tree, every energy that you don't know what it is, all of that is source. So it's like, how much of that can you reclaim? And one of the things that really helps me with that is this concept of the smoky mirror that is from the Toltecs. So when I have a smoky mirror experience, I'm realizing that what I think is outside of me is actually inside of me. It's my thing that's going on. It's just that I'm seeing it on the outside. So I think it's out there, but it's actually in here. And that smoky mirror prevents us from knowing that, because there's actually mechanisms in our brain that when we shut down the right brain, when we shut down the curiosity, when we shut down the imagination, we also shut down access to the subconscious, which is 98% of our of our consciousness is the subconscious. We shut down access to that, right? And so when we don't know how to navigate that space, we don't know how to navigate ourselves. And it's us that we're afraid of. We're literally afraid of ourselves in the dark. So when we do this work, we sort of step out of the black and white, sort of model of like, there's a good force and an evil force. There's just people and plants and animals, and like, we have created the boogeyman. Okay. So we just need to uncreate the boogeyman and like get about our business in healing ourselves and reclaiming ourselves from all this tragic history, and reclaim the gold, and really see through the eyes of love. And when we see through the eyes of love and acceptance of all that is, we are back in the Garden of Eden. It didn't go anywhere. It's right here. But that smoky mirror can make it look like it's not here. It can shift the perspective. So when we start to get into this area, we're really getting into an esoteric area where you really have to process things with your own intuition. You've got to be able to sit with yourself, ground yourself, open yourself when your nervous system gets freaked out. You've got to calm it back down again, open your mind, open your heart, really listen to what the energy actually is and what part of you is resonating with it, because it's calling you to bring it home. It's like, it's a reclamation of self. And that's what I do. And one of the things that guides me in that is Rumi. Rumi has this quote. He says, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. You are the murderer. You are the rapist. You are the priest. You are the saint. You are the angel. You are the devil. You are all of it." And when we come from that place, there's no more victim consciousness. There's no more projection of our shadow out onto the supposed perpetrator. There's no more waiting for a rescuer. There's only the recognition that I have everything I need inside of me. Because just like I'm a perpetrator sometimes with others, unintentionally, sometimes intentionally, I also have a rescuer inside of me that can save the situation by apologizing and making peace. And I'm not a victim because I can take action when I take responsibility for myself. So it's a whole shift in consciousness out of that externalized model, and it is a big shift. So it's going to take people a little while to integrate this.
Mm-hmm. So my last question, sometimes I ask, what would you put on your billboard that you want to tell everybody? But it's kind of like I want to ask a question like, what really matters? And for me, it helps to think a lot about, I heard Deepak Chopra talk about it. The funniest thing he says is, if he were to get married to Oprah, she'd be Oprah Chopra. But I heard him say, talk about Sith Cha. I don't even know if I can say it now. Sith Chat Ananda. So existence, consciousness, and bliss. And those are the things I think about a lot. What to exist in the Bible. Just going back to my compost, Moses or whoever it was said, what do I tell them when they ask, who are you? And supposedly God said, I am, I exist. And then Jesus kind of said the same thing later. He said, before Abraham was, I exist, ego eimi, I am. So I think about existence, and I think about consciousness, and I think about bliss or joy, or however you describe that. But it may be limiting to ask that question, to say what's most important. But I'm asking for you, and I want Laura to answer also, but just to say, for me, either what would I put on my board, or what's most important that I could share with you that I've discovered for moving forward. And then we'll kind of close up this way, unless we keep talking, then we won't. So, Tracy, you want to start us off?
Well, does Laura want to chime in first? No? Okay.
No.
I wanted to give you a chance, give you a moment.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll offer an insight. So often when we're crafting our personal spirituality and we're on this path of discovering what meaning means to us, what is our story going to be? How will we contribute? Our tendency, because we are so used to externalizing everything, is to do. There's doing, there's practices, and there's things we have to do. We're going to have to do things, create things, activities, and doing. And what I've realized through my journey and working through my guide team and so many beautiful teachers is there is so much in the non-doing that informs the doing. So if we are aligning with who we really are, we're doing that healing work and just stepping into our authenticity, knowing that that's something that's going to evolve in and of itself. And we, instead of always doing, we're asking what wants to emerge now. And we do the work to allow that to be, to allow that to happen instead of obstructing what wants to emerge in us. And then realize that being is the most profound and productive place we can be in the present moment. Everything comes from who we are being. So who do we choose to be? And that, of course, is also going to evolve in beautiful and unknown, miraculous, just magical ways. But if we can always return to that place in the present moment, who do I choose to be? Everything that comes next is informed from that. We'll always be stepping in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. We'll let you go next, Kerri.
Okay. So that was so eloquent and beautiful, and I'm going to follow that up. I would say the biggest thing for me, just being really practical, is don't throw yourself under the bus, because we have so much conditioning around judging ourselves, comparing ourselves to others, being punished if we make a mistake. There's so much conditioning around this because of these structures that have been in place for, thousands of years. We really got to be mindful about deconstructing that. So just don't throw yourself under the bus. Like, no matter what has happened, no matter who you used to be, no matter how you used to act, no matter what you did last week, that's just like how you used to act, but you thought you were over it and then you did it again. It's like everything, just trust that it's all divinely perfect. Like, we are perfecting, and it's perfect imperfectly. Like, everything is for the lesson. Everything is for the evolution, for the embodiment, for the reclamation of self. And, it's so hard sometimes, especially when we judge ourselves. Like, the more we know, the more we can look back and go, oh my gosh, I sure wish I knew that back then. I wish I had known that, because then I wouldn't have acted this way. But isn't that still part of the experience? Because we get this opportunity to see with fresh eyes every single moment if we let ourselves. So use that gift with like celebration, like, wow, I thought that then, now I think this now. I wonder what I'll think next. I wonder what I'll see next. It's kind of like that, staying in that awe and wonder without the judgment. And it's getting back to that innocence so that we can be just like the baby. When the baby shows up, the baby's eyes are like, wow, there's colors. Oh, the baby's ears hear the mother. Oh, that's the voice I heard in the womb. And it's like this amazing thing to be on the planet when you're in that sense of wonder and newness, that beginner's mind, and that you don't have to have it all figured out. And if you have it all figured out, that's your ego. Like, you actually, if you're in your soul, you actually don't know. And the masters like know the least. So like, that's true of every tradition, they're like the most curious. So when we think we know something, we really have to kind of sit with ourselves a little bit, like, I love, Carl, you said this before, like, it's not about certainty anymore. It's about being safe inside, knowing that you're a timeless, eternal being, and you're safe no matter what is going to happen, because who you are in truth is that timeless one. It's not this temporary experience. So when making that shift, we can celebrate the newness, the freshness, the new experiences, because we know we're okay. And I think that I'm looking forward to that, seeing what happens when more of the planet understands that.
Yeah. I think for me, one thing I've noticed over the last few years is just that reflective piece of myself. So what I mean by that is, like, so many times, and I totally resonate with what you're both saying, because so many times, like, I would look back at a situation and be very judgmental of myself. And I don't know how many times I've said to Carl, even, why am I still struggling with this? Here I am, 50 years old, and I'm still struggling with this. I'm still bothered by this. And then, rather than being open to it and examining it and being in my body, like you both have shared, I would stuff it down. And so I would say that one thing that I've noticed about myself is just that reflective piece is now like my friend. Like, we sit and we chat and we are like, there's no judgment. There's just like, this happened. Yeah, this happened. And it happened again. And just learning to be present with it and learning to be accepting of it. And like I said before, mistakes and reflecting on those things are how we grow and how we see things differently. And instead of doing self-harm by negative self-talk or whatever, I'm just more accepting and how can we move forward maybe differently next time. So, for lack of a better term, just having more grace for myself, and being aware of that with other people too. Like, I'm really sensitive to when people start just really, just being super hard on themselves and just like beating themselves up for things and wanting to just, reassure them that this is how we grow. This is how we grow. This is how we learn. Just like our littles that we're teaching, we don't expect perfection, and we should give ourselves the same, so yeah. Even though you coughed through my whole thing.
I'm sorry for coughing. That's what one casket said to the other casket. Is that you coughing? So for me, I'm going to borrow kind of what Tracy was saying about being and becoming. Mm-hmm. For me, it's expressed in presence and authenticity. So I always say, be where you are, which is presence, and be who you are, which is authenticity, then be at peace. So that's, I think, going to keep my dance card full for as long as I can see, becoming more conscious of those things, mm-hmm. becoming more aware, and we'll see where that leads. So far, it seems to be leading in the right direction, but we've enjoyed having you guys here.
Yeah,
that went so fast.
People getting
yeah, and we'll put in the notes where people can get in mm-hmm. touch with you guys, and so on. So, but we really enjoyed you being here. And
it's beautiful spending time with you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary. We hope you find who you are as you embark on your own journey.
For all of us here at the Desert Sanctuary, be who you are, be where you are, and be at peace.